sometimes flying by the seat of your pants and being reactive and impulsive is the recipe to trigger an argument.
Yeah.
It's almost a guarantee.
Right.
Because you're not thoughtful about what you want to say to your spouse. You're not thinking clearly. You're just reacting, and that can just cause a lot of problems. Hey everyone, I'm Larry.
And I'm Julia.
Welcome to the Beautifully Blended podcast. Our passion is to help and inspire marriages and blended families to find help, hope, and healing.
Yeah, we have been married for 15 years.
Yeah.
And we have a blended family. So we can tell you it has not been easy, but we want to encourage you that you too can have a healthy marriage.
Yeah, we've been through the fire, the rain, sickness, and pain.
Oh, my goodness.
But we made it.
Yes.
Listen, when we first got married, did you think it was going to be easy or hard?
Hard.
Okay. Did you know how hard?
No.
Yeah, no, I agree. We started a church 3.5 years ago called The Chapel.
Right.
We're in central Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg. And when we meet with our married couples, we have a fellowship, and we call it What Did I Do? The reason we call it that is because married couples, we stand at the altar, we cry, and we're all dressed up, and we're just like, I do. And no one knows what they did.
Right.
We just do it, but we don't really understand what we did. And that's how a lot of marriages are, and I know that's how we were.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you for kind of joining us and coming along on this journey with us. It's going to be fun. We're going to give you some relevant content and make sure that we connect with you.
We really want to reach as many people as possible, so please like, comment, and subscribe on our channel. And if this content has blessed you, we ask you to share it with others so we can get the word out.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for joining us. Let's jump into today's episode.
So making decisions as a single person is different than making decisions when you're married.
That is true. That is true.
It is way different.
It is.
When you make decisions as a single person, like the majority of people who are adults and they are single, they are making decisions for themselves.
Right.
And it only affects them.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect anyone else. When you are married, when you have a blended family, and you begin to make decisions now, those decisions don't just affect you. So you cannot be as quick just to make a decision and say, well, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
You have to give some consideration for the person you are married to so that that singular decision is now a joint decision.
Right, right. And so that transition between solo decisions and joint decisions can be challenging because now you're doing something new. You have to learn how to use a different muscle, right? Right? And so, you know, for you, was that hard? Was that hard when we got married for you to start making joint decisions?
Yeah, it was hard.
Well, tell us more about it.
Well, because, my decisions at that time were based on me being a single dad.
Right.
That's what I was at the time. So if I wanted to stay up late and, watch TV and not have a bedtime for my daughter, I'm just like, well, yeah, we're going to stay up late. And that's just what we're going to do. Let's watch a movie. Let's eat popcorn. Let's fall asleep on the couch.
Right.
And those decisions didn't affect anyone else. So, when you learn how to do that, or eating out.
Right.
Eating out, you don't have to think budget. When you're single and you have a child and you eat out, what you laughing at?
Because we have different experiences. Go ahead, I'm listening.
So when you eat out,
yes,
you pay for you and your child.
Yes.
Right? So you basically get whatever you want. I remember taking our youngest daughter now out to the finest restaurants, and she would get macaroni and cheese. And that was it. I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, we're at Maggiano's.
She was little. That was what she liked. She liked
and then she didn't like some of the macaroni and cheese because
she was a snob.
It was fancy. It wasn't Kraft. I don't know how much of a snob that is, but
it wasn't
Kraft. But anyway, making those decisions were much more simplified.
Yeah.
They were a lot more simplified because I didn't have to consider, if you wanted craft or whatever, whatever you wanted. What about you? Was it hard for you to make that transition?
I think it was. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no.
Okay.
So during our dating, we had opportunities to learn how to make decisions together and practice that muscle of making joint decisions.
Right.
I think for me, single mom with 2 kids, I was like very budget conscious and very like, we're going to split this
And
whole.
I was not.
No, very different. We're going to split this meal. We're going to make this all work. Everybody's going to get what they're going to get.
You get a P. You get a P.
No.
And you get a P.
I'm not saying it was that bad. But what I am saying is
Right.
I welcomed the support and not having to bear the load of making all the decisions on my own.
Yeah.
However, you gave a great example. Budget-wise, we were like totally opposite when it came to budget.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that was where I think it got challenging when it came to like some of those kinds of decisions.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
We just had different ideas of budgeting.
Yeah.
And we made it work individually, but then
Right.
when we come together and we had to make this work,
Yeah.
that was a dance that took us several years to figure out how to budget now the way the Colberts budget, not the way Julia does it,
Yeah.
not the way Larry does it, but how do we do this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. When you talk about, I like how you said how the Colberts do it. That's a decision that needs to be made for any blended family.
Right.
You may have history with your family of origin.
Right.
You may have history with another relationship that you were in.
Right.
But when you come together as husband and wife,
Right.
and you begin to blend your family, you have to make a decision, a very intentional decision. How are we going to do it in this household?
Right.
What does that look like? What do we cut
Right.
out? What do we bring in?
Right.
What do we implement that has
Right.
never been implemented before? And you have conversations around
Right.
like, this is how we're going to do things here.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why we try to encourage people when they're dating and they want to get married. Your biggest decision is not the venue.
No, it is not.
Your biggest decision is not the dress or the tux or the colors or the flowers or the bridesmaid. Those are not
Right.
the biggest decisions.
They swear that's the biggest decision.
But it's
they-
not.
Is it vanilla or chocolate? Like they swear that's the
vanilla or
biggest
French
decision.
vanilla, because there's slight differences.
Right.
But no, you have a lot more decisions to make once
Right.
you get into the marriage, and there are numerous decisions, and all of those
Yeah.
decisions, whether they're small or large, become joint decisions. So many of them become joint
Yep.
decisions because you are not an island to yourself.
Right.
You are now in a marriage.
Yeah. I like how you said it's a muscle that needs to be exercised. Like you.
Yeah.
And I love how you demonstrate
The muscle
the
being
muscle
exercised.
being exercised.
Yeah.
So it is this thing that needs to be developed through practice.
Right.
So there are a couple things that I think our listeners need to know.
Okay.
Okay. The first thing, and I wrote them down, the first thing is once 2 people enter into a marriage, the number of decisions that they should make on their own decreases significantly.
Yeah.
Like once you are married and you have a blended family,
Right.
the decisions that you make by yourself decreases by a large number.
Right.
And you no longer have the luxury to just make whatever decision that you want.
Right.
And the reason is because it doesn't just affect you.
Right.
It affects other people that are in your family. The second thing that I want our listeners to know is this is not because all of the decisions that you make have to be made together, but because they impact your spouse.
Right.
And you have to begin to implement a rhythmic thought pattern of
Right.
thinking about your spouse,
Right.
which is unnatural. Like when you're
It
single,
is.
you don't think about anybody else but you and what you need or your children,
Right.
right?
Right. And to the degree that you do think about others, you are still the final authority.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So even if you are thinking about others, there are people who are in their singleness who may support other people. They may support their mom or their dad or their uncle, support them by helping them and doing different things. But at the end of the day, you are the ultimate authority when you go into a marriage. There is some shared authority, right, within there, as far as there's accountability now between the two of you.
Yeah.
And so you are not, again, just this your own island.
Right, exactly. The other thing that I want the listeners to know is the greater that decision that you need to make, the more time it's going to take, the more communication
Oh, yeah, for sure.
you are going to have.
Right.
You just can't pull the trigger on buying a boat.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or I'd already have a boat.
Right, but you don't. You don't. You do not have a boat.
Right. So the greater the decision, the greater the impact of the
Right.
decision, the more conversation,
Right.
the more communication needs to take place between the husband and wife. And the last thing I wanted to share is if you want a healthy relationship, then learn to consider your spouse when you are making decisions.
Right.
Practice that. Even if it's a small decision, you know, what I've come to realize is that I'll talk to you about even small decisions.
Right.
Yeah, I can make the decision to buy a milkshake just for myself. But when I call you and say, hey, I'm going to grab a peach milkshake from Chick-fil-A, would you like one?
Absolutely.
I am choosing to think about you.
Right.
I am choosing to include you in a very minute decision.
Right.
But what am I doing? I'm practicing.
Right.
I'm getting better at making decisions with you.
Right.
And
right.
not practicing making decisions without you.
Right.
And when people practice to make decisions without their spouse, it could lead to a lot of trouble, and it makes it very difficult for you to surrender or for you to find humility and ask your spouse, hey, what do you think about this decision?
Right. Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And so that leads us into this whole idea, even when it comes to the art of asking questions and the importance of asking questions as you're making the decision-making process, you know, start to gel within your marriage. And so really for a husband or a wife, just being able to practice and learn how to ask the right questions, not leading questions,
Right.
not leading questions, leading you and encouraging you and suggesting and massaging the idea.
Do you want the blue one or the black one?
Right. And what if, no, I don't want any of them, right? There's no choice for no.
Right.
It's a choice between blue and black.
Right.
Do you want the blue boat or the black boat? I don't want a boat. You know, but learning how to ask the right questions with the right attitude and really thinking about, like, I want to have a healthy marriage. Therefore, we got to make decisions together, and I want to do it in a healthy way.
Yeah, we can be too quick to come to conclusions. And because we're so quick to come to conclusions, and in our mind, we already know what decision we want to make. We already know what the outcome is that we want to have. We kind of shy away from asking questions because that slows down the process.
Right. I just want to get this done, get her done. Don't want to ask a whole lot of questions. Right.
So a lot of couples, here's a few problems. Many couples don't know how to sincerely ask questions to their spouse because they've never done it before.
Yeah, well, that's true.
They've just never asked them questions.
Right.
Like, so how does that make you feel? If we were to make this decision, how would that impact you?
Right.
How do you think that would affect our finances?
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah. I know exactly what you're saying.
A lot of people don't know how to ask those questions because
so they don't ask it.
They,
They just don't ask. Don't ask, don't tell.
right? They've never done it before.
Right.
And it's hard. The other thing is many couples don't want to ask because they feel like it takes away from their value.
Right.
I don't have to answer to anybody.
Right. I'm grown.
Right.
I can do what I want to do.
I'm an adult. Why do I have to ask my husband what can I buy from the
this
store?
Is so archaic. Why I gotta ask him?
Right.
Yeah. No, baby. You need to ask. You need to have the conversation because your spouse needs to feel included.
Right.
And again, not that you're over here doing your own thing, not considering your spouse.
Right.
Right.
This is part of becoming one.
Yes.
Like, becoming one in a marriage does not happen at the altar.
No.
when you say I do and they say I do, you don't know what you did.
No.
And you don't become one in that moment.
No.
You become one over time.
Yeah.
You become one through difficulty. You become one when you learn how to ask difficult questions, when you learn how to answer questions that you didn't want to answer, but you muster up the courage to be humble enough to say, yes, dear, I understand. Yes, I'm sorry I did that. Like when you learn how to communicate at that level, you have just graduated from the elementary stages of communication to a more mature area of communicating, and asking questions will lead you there.
Right.
Learning to ask the right questions to your spouse.
Yeah.
How does this affect you? Are you okay? Is there anything else that I can do to make this decision easier for you? You know?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone trying and wanting to start there with asking questions. Sometimes I've seen people try and it just fails, right?
Yeah.
Because they're just like, you told me to ask questions, so I asked questions.
Because they're messy.
I know. Well,
And they're being messy.
yes, that is true.
The goal is not to ask the most sarcastic question that you can ask.
Right. With and have this tone like you assume, like, well, this is what it is, right? This is how you feel, right? And it's like, no, time out.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. That
Right.
doesn't work. How do you encourage someone? Where do they start with asking good questions, right questions, as they're trying to make decisions?
I think you start with writing down a few questions that you could ask your spouse.
Okay.
Think about us. We've had conversations where you wanted to share something or I wanted to share something. And in the middle of the conversation, I'm just like, I'm going to need a pen and a piece of paper.
Right.
While, like, you may be saying, and this is what needs to happen, and this is what I would like to see, and whatever. So I'm writing this down so I can respond to your needs. That is a demonstration of love.
Right.
Like when I'm listening so intently that I'm writing down my questions so that when you're done communicating what you would like to communicate to me, I can then ask you a few follow-up questions just to say, hey, if we do this, how does this affect our 2024 calendar?
Right.
If we do this, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, how's it about 2025?
How does this affect our children?
Right.
If we go with this decision, if we make this decision right now, it's going to cost us money that we didn't budget for.
Right.
So what is the plan to handle or revise our budget now that we have spent this money on this decision?
Right.
So writing down your questions really gives you more time to think through thoroughly what you want to ask rather than be reactive and impulsive.
And flying by the seat of your pants.
Right. And sometimes flying by the seat of your pants and being reactive and impulsive is the recipe to trigger an argument.
Yeah.
It's almost a guarantee.
Right.
Because you're not thoughtful about what you want to say to your spouse. You're not thinking clearly. You're just reacting, and that could just cause a lot of problems. Okay?
Yep.
One of the reasons that people don't want to ask questions and really engage their partner in making decisions could be they don't trust them.
Right.
They have trust issues and they don't, they just want to make the decision on their own because, let's say, for instance, if your spouse has had gambling problems.
Right.
It's hard to trust them with financial decisions.
Right.
Because you don't know what they're going to do with the finances. So, and I'll ask you this question. You're talking to someone, say you're talking to a wife who has a husband who is gambling and it's become uncontrollable.
Right.
They're reckless with spending the finances. How would you help that spouse be able to make decisions with their husband? Like, what kind of advice would you give the wife in that scenario?
Right. I mean, I think the first step really begins with making sure that in any of those kind of situations where there's some kind of addiction or some kind of draw that person, the other spouse has, making sure everyone's safe. because that addiction to gambling could leave them without a house, without
For sure.
a vehicle, without jobs, without food, without so many things.
Absolutely.
And so my first point of advice has to do with making sure everyone is safe, everyone is secure,
Yeah,
you have
that's
the
good.
things that you need, right? So that is the first thing. The second thing would be to work through some of the challenges in the marriage and making sure that when it comes to just the security that they need, as you're making decisions, there's some decisions that person is not going to be able to be a part of fully
Right.
because they've already damaged some issue. They've already caused some damage in the marriage, right? So you build and start to trust them in ways that you can trust them. I mean,
Right.
obviously there's some help that's needed. There's some support, some addiction therapy, different kinds of things that need to happen there.
Sure.
But you start to trust them in the small things.
Yeah, that's
right.
good. That's
You
good.
you can't trust them as far as like, yeah, let's throw all of our money in the same pot and we're gonna go buy this house. And it's like, whoa, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
It's something that has to be built up and earned,
Right.
right? As far as that. But you can learn to trust and make smaller decisions together
Right.
that help you to see, okay, we're doing okay. Okay, we're off a little bit.
Right.
But it takes time.
Yeah.
It just takes time. You don't trust with the big things right away. You start by trusting in the small things. You have open dialogue and conversation,
Yeah.
making sure that person understands the reason why we're not just going, just jumping
Right.
all in with this is because there's a process here.
Right. I agree. I think there needs to be an observable willingness
Yes.
in that spouse to make change. There needs to be a willingness to make change,
Right.
and as the husband and the wife communicate
Right.
about what that change looks like,
Right.
that produces trust.
It does. It does.
Being honest about what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with.
Right.
If you can muster up the courage to be honest about it,
Right.
that is a place where trust is developed.
Right.
So sometimes it's not always the decision about doing something. Sometimes it's your personal decision to be honest about where you are.
Right.
To be honest about what needs to
Right.
change in your own life and in your own
Right.
heart.
Right. Right.
Were you going to say something?
I was going to just say ongoing communication is going to be key
Yeah.
for both spouses,
Yep.
right? For the one who has the addiction and the
Right.
one who is, for lack of a better term, the victim or the one who is being impacted by that.
Yeah.
Communicating where you both are is going to be really important, and exposing. I think a lot of times, and this is kind of off but still on, a lot of times when there's some kind of issue with the past that prevents someone from being
Yeah.
able to trust when it comes to decision making, we have to expose that thing that caused the division in the first place.
Yeah.
And so that ongoing conversation, checking in, knowing where each other may be emotionally, mentally, spiritually,
Yeah.
is really helpful and helps to create this protection around the marriage so
sure.
that that thing, we see it as the enemy to the marriage,
Yeah.
right? And so that ongoing communication is really helpful so that you can get to that place to trust and start making decisions together.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to ask you that that may be like a one-off situation, but it's a very real situation. Like there are a lot of families, a lot of couples who are dealing with some sort of life-dominating
Right.
sin in their lives and in their
Right.
hearts and in their minds that they're
Right.
struggling with.
Right.
But it hinders the
Right.
husband and the wife from making some of those major decisions together
Right.
until the spouse finds healing or they
Right.
get counseling
Right.
from their trauma or
Right.
from their past.
Right. I want to add to that. In a situation where there's not that kind of life dominating sin, let's say there was some kind of abuse or some kind of
Yeah.
negative or bad experiences. Let's think about, with blended families or second, third families, marriages, second and third marriages, there was something that was before. And so now you may, as a husband or wife, may struggle with making those decisions together, not because that other person has done anything to
Yeah.
show you that they're going to be bad at the decision making,
Right.
that they're going to harm you or not going to help you. but because of your own trauma.
Yeah.
And so again, that communication is really helpful
I agree.
so that you can make sure that you're able to make those decisions together.
And work through that trauma.
Yes.
Like if you're not communicating, you're not able to work through past trauma, you're still protecting yourself from a
Right.
spouse that's not even in the picture.
Right.
You're still fighting against an old relationship,
Right.
and you're holding it against your
Right.
husband or your wife
Right.
based on something that happened in
Right.
a different relationship.
Something you saw in someone else's relationship.
Yeah.
You weren't even married before. You just something you saw in someone else. I'm never going to let that happen to me.
Right.
I'm never going. And it's like you're allowing that to be the reason that you don't make decisions together with
Right.
your spouse.
Right. So here's the thing. If you don't learn how to make decisions with your spouse, you're practicing singleness
Yeah. While you're married.
while you're married.
Yeah.
Like you're practicing
Yeah.
singleness while being in a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
And that will drive a wedge between you and your spouse, and you'll wonder why you can't get along.
Right.
You can't get along, and you are fighting and struggling, and you're not able to agree on
Right.
certain decisions, because if one spouse is practicing singleness and another spouse is practicing marriage,
Right.
and those two are together under the same roof,
Right.
there's always going to be tension, and you'll never really be able to connect.
Yeah.
Why? Because you have a distance
Yeah. That's so true.
between the two of you, and you can't talk to each other, and you
Yeah.
can't go on a date with one another, and you have difference of opinion when it comes to the kids, and
Right.
and you just don't seem to agree on dinner, and one
Yeah.
person wants to buy the dog kibbles and bits, and the other one wants to give the dog fresh pets food from the refrigerator, and
Right.
you never seem to come together. That's because one person is practicing singleness.
Yeah.
I'm making the decision. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to do this the right way.
Right.
You're not doing it the right way. I'm going to make sure that it is handled because I don't trust you. And the more you do that, you are practicing singleness, which is driving a wedge in between the husband and the
Right.
wife.
Right. Right. So what I'm hearing you say then.
I said what I said.
You did. You did. But what I'm hearing you say, I'm going to summarize some
Okay.
of what you're saying.
Don't encapsulate me.
I am. You'll be fine. In order to make decisions together, we need to be unified,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
There
for
needs to be
sure.
unity,
Yeah.
humility, but there needs to be unity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Needs
So-
to be trust too.
Yep. Yep. You got to
Right.
have trust and you have to have unity. And how do we get there? How do we get to trust and unity?
Right. There's a couple verses. I got two verses.
Okay.
That I think we should look at. One's in Ecclesiastes 4. And if you look at verses 9 through 12, this is what it says. And this is so good for married couples. Please listen to this. Write this down. Read it. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. How good is that?
That's real good.
It just puts this emphasis back on 2 are stronger, are better
Right.
than 1. And like I talked about a few moments ago, we can, because of a variety of reasons, practice singleness while we're married.
Right.
And if we do that, we're doing the opposite of what the scripture is
Right.
saying when it says 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return on their labor. They can get things done.
Right.
Right? They can be efficient.
Right.
They have help. And it says if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. Who is helping you up if you are choosing to
Right.
be on an island all by yourself?
Right.
You're isolating yourself, and it can just be really challenging.
Yeah, that can be.
Let's read the second verse in Philippians 2, verse 2. And this is in the New Living Translation. It says, then make me truly happy. And this is Paul saying, make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and one purpose. And that really sums up the heart of 2 believers, 2 Christians, a husband and a wife, a father and a child, a mother and their children. Like, if you want your family to blend beautifully, if you want to be able to make healthy decisions,
Right.
if you want to have healthy communication and
Right.
be able to work through difficulties, this is the remedy here. It
Right.
says wholeheartedly agree. And sometimes we half-heartedly agree. Going back to what we talked about before, we tolerate
Yeah.
one another.
Yep.
Half listening, barely interested, but it
Right.
says wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
It says agreeing wholeheartedly. That means everything I have in me, it's not fighting against what you're telling me.
Right.
You know,
Right,
I'm not
right.
fighting against what I'm wholeheartedly agreeing
Right.
with you. And it says loving one another and working together with one mind and one purpose. There's no room for division.
Right. Right.
There's just no room for division in there.
Right. Right. Well, that one mind and purpose is all centered on God, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so
Yeah.
if that's our focus and that's our center, that's where we're heading.
Yeah.
That's how we can agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Because if you agree and I agree on the purpose and the one mind in God, then
Yep.
that's where we're going. And so when it comes to our families and our marriages, as we're making decisions, we want that to be the focal point. We want
Agreed.
that to be where we stand.
Yeah, I agree. This was a
Yeah.
good conversation.
It was.
Like making decisions matters.
It does.
It matters a great deal. I'm glad we're able to share our heart, our stories. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Beautifully Blended podcast. Our passion, again, is to inspire marriages and blended families to find hope, and healing. If this is your first time, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Wherever you listen to your podcast, like it, download it, share it,
Right.
comment, engage with us. Yeah, do all the things.
All the things.
Because we are really looking to reach the people who need to hear this message of hope. So God bless you guys, and thank you for joining us.